Daniel Carter stepped out of the shuttle onto the smooth landing platform of Varelia. The air felt warm and thick, carrying a faint sweet smell like fresh rain mixed with metal. Two suns hung low in the violet sky, painting everything in soft purple and gold light. Tall spires rose around him, their surfaces glowing with faint light that pulsed slowly like heartbeats. This was the royal palace of the Varelian Empire, a place few humans had ever seen. Daniel adjusted his dark suit. It was a simple Earth design, but the Varelians had added thin, shimmering fabric over the shoulders and chest as a sign of respect. The material caught the light and changed color slightly with each step he took. He carried no weapons, only a small translator device clipped to his ear and a calm expression on his face. At 34, he had spent 10 years working as a civilian diplomat on the embassy ship Endeavour. His job was to listen, learn, and keep things peaceful between humans and other species. Today felt different. Today he had been invited to a royal wedding. A tall Varelian guard approached. His body was covered in natural armor plates that shone like polished stone. His eyes glowed softly yellow. "Human Daniel Carter," the guard said in a deep, rumbling voice. The translator in Daniel's ear made the words clear and smooth. "Follow me. The ceremony waits for no one." Daniel nodded and walked behind the guard. His boots made soft clicks on the glowing floor. Around him other Varelians moved in groups. They were much taller than humans, most over 7 feet, with long limbs and skin that shifted colors faintly, to match their moods or the light. Some wore flowing robes made of energy threads that floated around them. Others had armor decorated with glowing symbols. All of them glanced at Daniel with curiosity. A human at a royal event was rare. They passed through wide halls with walls that looked like living crystal. Small orbs of light drifted above their heads, lighting the way. Daniel noticed patterns in the crystal, swirls and lines that seemed to tell stories if you stared long enough. He had read about Varelian art before coming. Their buildings were not just structures, they were records of their history, their thoughts, and their feelings. At last they reached a large open balcony. Below it stretched the grand amphitheater. It was huge, carved into the side of a mountain. Rows of seats rose in circles, filled with thousands of Varelians dressed in their finest clothes. In the center of the open space floated hundreds of glowing orbs, held in place by gentle gravity fields. They looked like tiny captured stars, shining in every color. The sky above was clear, showing the second sun just starting to set. A soft wind carried the sound of distant music, deep notes mixed with high, clear tones that made Daniel's skin tingle. The guard led him to a special section near the front. "Here is your place among the honored guests," the guard said. Daniel thanked him and sat down. The seat was comfortable, shaped to fit any body, and warm to the touch. Next to him sat 2 other humans from the embassy, quiet officers who gave him small nods. Daniel returned the nods, but kept his eyes on the center platform. The wedding was about to begin. This marriage would join the Varelian Empire with the strong clan of Zorath. For many years the two groups had argued over border worlds and trade routes. War had almost started more than once. Now a wedding would bring peace. The groom was Prince Kalor of Zorath, a warrior known for his strict honor. The bride was said to come from a noble Varelian family, though few people spoke her name openly. Daniel had heard only whispers during his trip here, something about her being special, but no one explained why. Music swelled, deep and slow. Everyone stood. Daniel rose with them. From a high archway the king appeared. His name was Thalor. He was the largest Varelian Daniel had ever seen, with armor plates that gleamed gold and red. A long cape of pure light trailed behind him. He walked to the center platform with slow, powerful steps. The crowd made a low humming sound of respect. Behind the king came the groom. Prince Kalor wore heavy black armor, decorated with silver spikes. His face was calm, almost cold. He stood straight and waited. Then the music changed. Softer notes filled the air. The bride entered. She walked slowly under heavy veils that shimmered like water. Energy ribbons floated around her, red and gold, moving as if alive. Guards walked on both sides, but she kept her head low. Daniel watched closely. Something about the way she moved felt different. Not the smooth, graceful steps of other Varelians. Her movements were smaller, more careful, almost like someone who was nervous. He leaned forward slightly. The king raised his arms. His voice carried across the amphitheater without any device. Today we bind two great lines. Today peace becomes stronger than war. Let the rite begin. Servants brought forward ancient objects, a crystal ball filled with glowing liquid, a blade made of star metal, and a band of woven light. The king spoke old words in the Varelian tongue. Daniel's translator gave simple meanings, promises of loyalty, strength, and shared future. The groom repeated the words in a strong voice. Then it was the bride's turn. She lifted her veiled head. For a moment she stayed silent. The crowd waited. Daniel felt his heart beat faster. Why did this feel so strange? The king stepped closer to her. He reached out and slowly lifted the final veil. The energy ribbons parted like curtains. The face beneath was not what anyone expected. Her skin was smooth and pale, closer to human tone than the shifting colors of Varelians. Her eyes were large, but not glowing. Her features looked delicate, almost familiar. She had shaped herself, changed her body with science or will, to look more like a human woman. And when she spoke, her voice came clear and strong, using English words that echoed in every mind through telepathy. "My name is Laura," she said. Gasps and low murmurs filled the air. Daniel sat frozen. He knew that name. He had seen records of a Varelian princess who studied human culture in secret, who learned English from old broadcasts, who dreamed of something beyond tradition. But no one had said she was the bride. The king's face tightened. His glowing eyes flashed. This was his daughter, his own child, hidden for years as a distant relative to avoid shame over her different traits. Now she stood here, revealed, refusing to play the quiet role. Daniel felt eyes turn toward him, the only human close enough to matter. Laura looked straight at him. In his mind, he heard her quiet thought, sent only to him. "You came. Thank you." The ceremony had just begun, but everything had already changed. The music faded into a deep, quiet hum. Every eye in the amphitheater fixed on the center platform. Laura stood there, unveiled, her face calm, but her hands tight at her sides. The energy ribbons around her flickered like they felt her tension. King Thalor lowered his arms slowly. His glowing eyes narrowed. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then the groom, Prince Kalor, took one step forward. His black armor creaked. His voice came out low and sharp. "This is not the bride we were promised." The words carried across the open space. Murmurs rose from the Zorath side of the seats. Their delegates wore dark cloaks and silver masks. They leaned forward, angry. King Thalor turned to face them. His cape of light flared brighter. "The bride is of royal blood," he said. "She carries the line of Virelia. The union stands." His tone left no room for argument, but the crowd felt the lie in the air. Everyone knew now, this was no distant cousin. This was his daughter, the one born different, the one he had hidden for years. Laura lifted her chin. She spoke again, this time louder. Her English was clear, almost perfect. "I will not marry to hide your shame, father." The words hit like stones dropped in still water. Ripples of shock spread through the thousands of guests. Some Virelians covered their faces with their hands. Others stared with wide eyes. Telepathic whispers filled the minds of everyone present. Confusion, anger, disbelief. Daniel Carter sat very still in his seat. His heart pounded hard. He could feel the weight of all those eyes shifting toward the human section, toward him. Laura had looked right at him when she first spoke his name in her mind. Now she stood alone on the platform, but she was not looking at the king or the prince. She was looking at Daniel. Prince Kalor turned his head toward the human seats. His yellow eyes found Daniel easily. "Human," he said. The word sounded like an insult. "Why does the daughter of Thalor speak your tongue? Why does she speak at all?" The question hung in the air. Daniel felt his mouth go dry. He stood up slowly. The other humans next to him grabbed his arm, but he shook them off gently. He stepped into the aisle between the rows. Every sound seemed louder. The soft wind, the hum of the floating orbs, the breathing of the crowd. "I was invited as a guest," Daniel said. His voice was steady, though inside he felt like he was falling. "I came to honor peace. That is all." Laura took a small step toward the edge of the platform. The energy ribbons pulled at her like chains. "He came because I asked for him," she said. "I studied your people, Daniel Carter. I listened to your stories, your songs, your news. Humans choose their own paths. Humans say no when the answer should be yes. I wanted someone here who understood that." The king raised one massive hand. "Silence." The command echoed like thunder. The floating orbs dimmed for a second. This is not the place for such talk. The rite continues. But the rite did not continue. Guards moved closer to Laura. Their armor plates clicked as they raised their weapons, long staffs that glowed at the tips. Prince Kalor lifted his own blade. It was thin and curved, made of the same star metal as the wedding objects. "If the bride refuses," he said, "then the alliance breaks. Blood will answer for this insult." Daniel felt cold sweat on his back. He had no weapon. He had no armor. He was just a man in a suit with shimmering fabric that now felt silly. But he also knew something the Varelians did not expect. Humans did not always win with strength. Sometimes they won with words, sometimes with quick thinking, sometimes just by refusing to back down. He took another step forward. Now he stood at the bottom of the short stairs that led up to the platform. Their staffs pointed his way. "Wait," Daniel called out. His voice carried farther than he thought it would. The translator helped, but the calm tone was all his own. "There is a rule in our treaties, the one humans wrote into every agreement with Varelia. Any honored guest may speak if they believe a union goes against free will." The crowd went quiet again. Even the wind seemed to stop. King Thalor stared down at him. "You dare invoke our own laws against us?" Daniel met the king's gaze. "I dare because the law is clear. Consent must be given freely. No one can be forced, not even a princess." Laura's eyes widened slightly. She had not expected him to know that clause. She had hoped he would help, but she had not known how. Now she saw a chance. Prince Kalor laughed, a short, harsh sound. "A human speaks of law? You who bend rules like soft metal?" Daniel did not flinch. "We bend rules to protect people. That is the difference." The king looked from Daniel to Laura, then back to the Zoroth prince. For the first time, uncertainty showed in his huge face. If he forced the wedding now, the alliance might shatter anyway. If he let this human speak, he might lose face in front of his own people. He lowered his hand slowly. "A hearing," the king said at last. "We will allow a short hearing. The human may present his case. Then the rite will finish, one way or another." Guards stepped back. The tension eased just enough for people to breathe again. Daniel climbed the stairs. His legs felt heavy, but he kept his face calm. When he reached the platform, Laura gave him a small nod. It was the first time he had seen her smile, even if it was tiny and quick. They stood together now, human and Varelian princess, facing the king, the prince, and thousands of watching eyes. Daniel spoke first. You hid her because she was born different. Her genes did not match the old standards of purity. But different does not mean wrong. She changed her body to look more like us, because she wanted to understand freedom. She learned our language, because she wanted to speak her own truth. He turned to the crowd. You all know the old laws. Purity above all, strength above choice. But look at what happened here today. One person said no, and the whole empire stopped to listen. That is power. Not blades, not armor, choice. Prince Kalor stepped closer. His blade stayed in his hand. Words are cheap, human. If you believe so much in this female, then prove your worth. Face me in the ritual circle. Winner decides the fate of the bride. Daniel looked at Laura. She shook her head just a little. No. But her eyes said something else. Trust me. Daniel looked back at the prince. I accept. Gasps rose again. A human against a Zoroth warrior? It sounded like madness. But Daniel knew one thing. The ritual combat was not always about killing. Sometimes it was about showing something greater. The king nodded once. Then it is set. The hearing pauses. The circle opens at first light tomorrow. The floating orbs brightened again. Music started once more, but it sounded different now. Tense, uncertain. The crowd began to talk in low voices. Some looked angry. Some looked thoughtful. A few even looked at Daniel with something close to respect. Laura leaned close to him, as the guards led them off the platform. You did not have to do this, she whispered. Daniel gave a small shrug. Someone had to. Besides, I hate weddings that feel like traps. She almost laughed. It was a soft sound, surprised and warm. They walked down a side corridor together, away from the crowd. The palace walls glowed softly around them. For the first time since he arrived, Daniel felt like he belonged here. Not as a guest, but as someone who mattered. Tomorrow would bring the fight. Tomorrow would decide everything. But tonight, at least, the truth was out. And it had started with one human who refused to stay quiet. The palace corridors felt colder now. The soft glow from the walls seemed dimmer, like the building itself held its breath. Daniel walked beside Laura as guards led them to a private chamber high in one of the spires. No one spoke. The only sounds were their footsteps and the faint hum of energy threads in the air. The chamber door opened with a quiet hiss. Inside, the room was round, with a wide window that looked out over the dark mountains and the twin suns that had now set. Small lights floated near the ceiling, like fireflies. A low table stood in the center, with two chairs. One was shaped for Varelian size. The other looked human-sized. Someone had prepared it for him. The guards stayed outside. The door closed behind them. Laura let out a long breath. The energy ribbons around her arms faded away, leaving her in a simple white robe that shimmered faintly. She looked smaller without the veils and decorations, more real. Daniel stood near the window. He kept his hands in his pockets so they would not shake. That was brave, he said quietly, what you did out there. Laura walked to the table and sat. She looked up at him. Brave or foolish, I am not sure yet. Her voice sounded tired. I planned this for a long time. I changed my body. I learned your language. I even sent the invitation myself, using a false name from your embassy staff. I thought if a human saw the truth, things might change. But I did not expect this. Daniel pulled out the other chair and sat across from her. You did not expect your father to let it go this far. She shook her head. He has hidden me since I was born. My genes were wrong. Too many human-like traits from an old experiment my mother agreed to before she died. The Empire calls it impurity. He called it shame. So he raised me in secret towers. Teachers came, books came, but no one knew I was his child, until today. Why show it now? P. Because the marriage would have been forever, she said. Kalor is strong, but cold. He would have kept the old ways. Purity laws would stay. My people would stay trapped in rules that hurt more than help. I could not let that happen, not when I knew there was another way. Daniel thought for a moment. You studied humans. What did you learn that made you think we could help? Laura smiled a little. It was small, but warm. Your stories, your movies, your news. Humans fight rules all the time. You question kings and laws. You make mistakes, but you keep trying to be free. I wanted that here. I wanted my people to see it was possible. Daniel nodded slowly. And now we have a fight tomorrow. Me against Kalor, in ritual combat. Laura's smile faded. You should not have accepted. He will kill you. The circle allows death if one side demands it. I know, Daniel said, but I also know the rules of the ritual. It is not always about strength. Sometimes it is about will, about showing something the other side cannot ignore. She looked at him closely. What will you show? Daniel thought back to his years on the Endeavor. He had fixed engines during storms in space. He had talked down angry traders who wanted war. He had once rebuilt a broken translator in the middle of a negotiation, so both sides could understand each other again. I will show them that humans do not need armor or size to win. We use our heads. We use tools in ways no one expects. Laura stood up. She walked to a small panel on the wall and touched it. A hidden door slid open. Inside was a shelf with strange objects, tools, crystals, small devices. These are from the ceremony preparations. Some are for the ritual circle. Take what you need. Daniel stood and looked at the shelf. There were harmonic disruptors, small rods that could send sound waves to break stone or metal. There were gravity modulators, devices that could make things lighter or heavier for a moment. There were energy blades, but he left those alone. He picked up one disruptor and one modulator. They felt light in his hands. Will these help? Laura asked. Maybe, Daniel said, if I can change how they work. Fast. They spent the next hours talking. Laura told him more about Varelian combat rituals. The circle was a ring of light on the ground. No one could leave until one side gave up or fell. Weapons were allowed, but clever use mattered more than brute force. Daniel asked questions. He listened. He even made her laugh once when he tried to copy a Varelian bow and almost fell over. Outside, the palace was quiet, but Daniel knew it was not peaceful. Messengers ran through halls. Delegates argued in side rooms. The Zorath prince walked the grounds with his guards, sharpening his blade. King Thalor sat alone in his throne room, staring at old images of his daughter as a child. As the night grew deeper, Laura grew quiet. She sat by the window and looked at the stars. If you lose tomorrow, she said, they will force the marriage anyway, or worse. Daniel stood beside her. Then I will not lose. She turned to him. Why do this? You could walk away. The embassy would protect you. Because someone has to stand up, he said simply, and because you asked for help in the only way you knew how. That means something. Laura reached out and touched his hand. Her skin was warm, smoother than he expected. Thank you, Daniel Carter. He gave a small smile. Just Daniel is fine. They stayed like that for a while, looking out at the dark sky. The floating lights in the room dimmed slowly. When the first light of the suns touched the horizon, a soft chime sounded. The guards knocked once. It is time, one said through the door. Daniel let go of her hand. He put the disruptor and modulator in his pockets. They felt heavy now, like promises. Laura walked with him to the door. Be careful, she said. I will, he answered. And you stay strong. Whatever happens, you already changed things. They cannot hide you anymore. She nodded. Her eyes were bright. The guards led Daniel down long stairs and through tunnels. The air grew cooler. The sound of a crowd grew louder. They came out into a wide-open circle carved into the rock, the ritual arena. Thousands of Virelians and Zoraths stood around the edges. The circle itself was a ring of blue light on the ground, 10 meters wide. In the center stood Prince Kalor. He wore lighter armor now, black plates with red lines. His curved blade rested on his shoulder. He looked calm, confident. King Thalor stood on a raised platform above the circle. Laura was brought to sit beside him. Guards stood close, but she held her head high. Daniel stepped into the circle. The blue light rose around him like a wall. No one could enter or leave now, until it ended. Kalor looked at him. Human, last chance, yield and live. Daniel took a slow breath. I do not yield. The prince smiled. Then let us begin. He charged. Daniel moved to the side, just enough. The blade cut air where he had stood. Kalor was fast, too fast for a human to match in strength. But Daniel did not try to match strength. He pulled out the harmonic disruptor. His fingers worked quickly. He twisted a small dial he had noticed earlier. The rod began to hum louder than normal. He aimed it at the ground near Kalor's feet. A sharp wave of sound shot out. The rock cracked. The crowd made a surprised sound. Daniel did not stop. He ran to the other side of the circle. Kalor recovered and came after him, blade raised. Daniel pulled the gravity modulator. He pointed it at Kalor's armor and pressed the button. For a second, the armor became heavier. Kalor dropped to one knee. The blade hit the ground hard. The prince growled. He pushed up with effort. Tricks, he said. Clever tricks. Daniel kept moving. Sometimes tricks are all you need. Kalor lunged again. This time Daniel dodged and used the disruptor once more. This time aimed at the prince's weapon arm. The sound wave hit the armor joint. It locked. Kalor could not lift the blade fully. The crowd grew louder. Some cheered, some shouted in anger. Daniel felt his lungs burn. He was tired, but he saw an opening. He ran straight at Kalor. The prince swung with his good arm. Daniel ducked low and pressed the modulator against the prince's chest plate. He turned it to maximum lightness. Kalor's armor lifted him off the ground like a balloon. He floated up, helpless, arms waving. Daniel stepped back. Yield, he said. Kalor struggled. His face showed shock, then anger, then something else, respect. I yield, he said at last. The blue light around the circle faded. The crowd went silent for a moment. Then cheers exploded. Some from Varelians, some even from Zorath. Daniel stood in the center, breathing hard. He looked up at the platform. Laura was on her feet. She smiled wide. King Thalor stared down at him. His face was hard to read. But he raised one hand. The human has won, the king said. The right is broken. The alliance will be remade, on new terms. Daniel felt the weight lift from his shoulders. He looked at Laura. She nodded once. The fight was over. But the real change had just begun. The cheers from the crowd slowly died down. The blue light of the ritual circle faded completely. Prince Kalor still floated a few feet off the ground, his heavy armor made light by the modulator Daniel had used. The prince's face showed no anger now, just surprise and a kind of quiet understanding. He raised his free hand in the old sign of surrender. Two Zorath guards stepped forward quickly. They caught him as the gravity effect wore off, and he dropped gently to his feet. Daniel stood in the center of the arena. His chest rose and fell fast. Sweat ran down his face. His hands still held the disruptor and modulator, but he lowered them now. He felt every eye on him. The Varelians high in their seats, the Zorath delegates in their dark cloaks, the king on the raised platform, and Laura beside him. King Thalor stood up slowly. His golden armor caught the first strong light of the rising suns. He looked down at Daniel for a long time. No one spoke. The wind moved softly through the open space, carrying the faint smell of warm stone. At last the king spoke. His voice was deep and carried without effort. The circle has spoken. The human has won by skill, not by blood. The old right is broken. He paused. The marriage will not take place. A wave of sound rolled through the crowd. Some gasps, some low cheers, some angry mutters from the Zorath side. Prince Kalor stepped forward. He sheathed his curved blade with a slow, careful motion. I accept the outcome, he said. His voice was steady. But the alliance must still stand. Our clans need peace. What terms do you offer now, Thalor? The king looked at his daughter. Laura had risen to her feet. She no longer looked small or hidden. She stood straight, her white robe bright in the morning light. Her eyes met her father's. For the first time in many years, he did not look away. The terms will change, the king said. No more hidden bloodlines, no more forced unions for the sake of old laws. My daughter will speak for herself, and the empire will listen. He turned to Daniel. Human, you came as a guest, you leave as something more. Name your wish, the empire owes you a debt. Daniel wiped sweat from his brow. He looked around the arena, at the thousands of faces, at Laura, at the prince who had fought him, and now stood without hate. He took a slow breath. I wish for nothing for myself, Daniel said, but I ask for one thing. Let Laura choose her path. Let her stay here if she wants, or go where she chooses. And let your people talk openly about change. The purity laws hurt more than they protect. Let them be questioned. Let new ideas come in. That is all I ask. The king stared at him. Then slowly, he nodded. It will be done. Laura stepped to the edge of the platform. Guards moved aside to let her pass. She walked down the stairs and into the arena. The crowd watched in silence. When she reached Daniel, she stopped in front of him. You kept your promise, she said quietly. Daniel gave a tired smile. I had good help. She reached out and touched his arm. Come, there is more to do. They walked together out of the circle. The king followed a short distance behind. Prince Kalor and his guards joined them. The crowd parted as they moved through the wide stone paths back toward the palace. Whispers followed them, some excited, some unsure, but none angry now. Inside the palace, they entered a large hall with high windows. Sunlight poured in, making the crystal walls shine. Servants brought water and soft fruit. Everyone sat at a long table. For the first time, humans, Varelians, and Zorath sat together without weapons or guards between them. Laura spoke first. Father, the people need to know the truth. All of it. My birth, the changes I made to my body. If we hide again, nothing will change. The king looked down at his hands. They were large, covered in faint glowing lines. I thought hiding protected the empire, he said. I was wrong. Prince Kalor leaned forward. My clan will accept a new treaty, but it must include respect for choice. No more marriages forced by old promises. We will trade openly, we will share knowledge, and we will learn from the humans who showed us today that strength comes in many forms. Daniel listened quietly. He drank water and ate a small piece of fruit that tasted like sweet citrus. He felt the weight of the morning lifting slowly. Laura turned to him. Will you stay, for a time? Help us write the new terms. Help us understand your ways better. Daniel thought about the embassy ship waiting in orbit. He thought about his small room there, his quiet life of reports and meetings. Then he looked at Laura, her steady eyes, her hope. I will stay, he said, as long as you need me. The talks went on for hours. They spoke of borders, of trade, of laws. Daniel explained human ideas, simple things like voting, like personal rights, like learning from mistakes instead of hiding them. The Virelians listened. Some asked questions, some argued, but no one walked away. By afternoon, the first new agreement was written on a crystal tablet. It was short but clear. The alliance would stand, but as equals. No forced marriages. Purity laws would be studied and changed where they caused harm. Humans would have a permanent voice on Virelia, a small embassy inside the palace. Laura would lead a council for new ideas. The king pressed his hand to the tablet. Light ran through the crystal, sealing the words. Prince Kalor did the same, then Laura. Last, Daniel placed his hand on it. The light felt warm against his skin. When it was done, the king stood. The day ends with peace, he said, and with change. That evening, Daniel walked with Laura on a high balcony. The twin suns set again, painting the sky in deep purple and orange. Below them, the city lights began to glow. soft blues and greens moving like waves. "You did more than win a fight," Laura said. "You gave my people a new story." Daniel leaned on the railing. "Stories change when people see something different. I just happen to be the different one today." She laughed softly. "You are more than different. You are stubborn and kind." He looked at her. "And you are brave. Braver than most." They stood in silence for a while. The wind moved her robe gently. The stars came out one by one. "What happens next?" Daniel asked. "Tomorrow we begin," she said. "We talk to the people, we teach, we learn, and you will be here to help." Daniel nodded. "I will." She reached out and took his hand again. This time she did not let go quickly. The night grew quiet. The palace settled. Somewhere far below, music started. New music, not the old ceremony songs. It had higher notes, freer rhythms. It sounded a little like human jazz, mixed with Virelian hums. Daniel listened. He felt tired, but good. For the first time in a long time, he felt like he belonged somewhere bigger than himself. The invitation had brought him here. The truth had kept him here. And now the future waited, open, uncertain, but full of possibility. One human, in a galaxy of giants, had reminded everyone that small choices could move mountains. And the stars above Virelia seemed to shine a little brighter because of it. The days after the ritual circle felt different on Virelia. The palace still glowed with the same soft lights, but the air carried a new feeling. Lighter, freer, like a heavy door had finally opened. Daniel Carter walked the wide halls without guards following him everywhere. People nodded to him now. Some even smiled. A few young Virelians stopped to ask questions about Earth, about humans, about why he had risked so much for someone he barely knew. Laura led most of the changes. She moved through the palace like someone who belonged in every room, not just the hidden ones. She wore simple robes now. No heavy veils, no energy ribbons that looked like chains. Her skin still held the pale tone she had chosen, but she no longer tried to hide who she was. She spoke in both Virelian and English, switching easily so everyone could understand. Daniel stayed close to her side most days. He listened. He gave quiet advice. He helped write messages that went out to cities across the planet. The first big meeting happened in the same grand amphitheater where the wedding had started. This time, no floating orbs for ceremony. No music to force silence. Just thousands of Virelians sitting in the perv seats, waiting. Screens showed the faces of people watching from faraway places. Laura stood on the center platform alone at first. Daniel waited below with the small human group from the embassy. Laura raised her hands. The crowd grew quiet. "For too long," she began, "we hid parts of ourselves. We hid differences. We hid truths. We thought strength came from being the same. But strength comes from many voices together, from choice, from listening." She looked down at Daniel for a moment. He gave her a small nod. "Today we start something new," she continued. "The old purity laws will be studied by a council of many, old families, young thinkers, even visitors from other worlds. We will keep what helps us, we will change what hurts us, and we will not hide anymore." The crowd made a low hum of agreement. Some faces stayed hard, but most listened. When Laura finished, she invited others to speak. A teacher from a small city talked about children born different. A trader from the border shared stories of working with humans and learning new ways. Even a Zorath elder sent a recorded message of support. Prince Kalor had returned to his own lands, but he kept his word. Peace held. After the meeting, Daniel and Laura walked through the gardens behind the palace. Tall plants with glowing leaves moved gently in the evening wind. Small lights drifted between the branches like slow stars. "You did well today," Daniel said. Laura shook her head. "We did well. Without you, none of this would have started." Daniel picked a small glowing flower and handed it to her. It started with you saying no. I just helped make sure people heard it. They sat on a low stone bench. The twin suns had set, leaving the sky deep purple. Stars filled the space above them. I want to show you something, Laura said. She touched a small device on her wrist. A soft hologram appeared between them. A map of Varelia, with new marks in blue light. These are places where people have already asked to join the council. More every day. Your name is on many of the messages. They call you the human who taught us choice. Daniel looked surprised. I did not teach anything. I just stood there. You stood when others would have run, she said. That is teaching. They talked late into the night. Laura asked about Earth cities, about oceans, about music humans played in small rooms with friends. Daniel told her stories. Simple ones about rainy days, about fixing broken machines with parts he found in junk piles, about people who argued but still helped each other. She listened with wide eyes, like every word was new. Weeks turned into months. The new council met often. Daniel sat at the table with Varelian elders, scientists, and young students. He spoke when he had something useful to say. Mostly, he listened. He learned their language better. He learned their old songs. He even tried their food, spicy roots that made his mouth burn, and sweet fruits that tasted like honey and metal at the same time. One day a message came from the Endeavor. The embassy ship would stay in orbit longer. Earth leaders had heard the full story. They wanted humans to keep a stronger presence on Varelia. They asked Daniel if he would stay as liaison. He did not need long to answer. Yes. Laura built a new home for herself, not in a hidden tower, but in a bright wing of the palace open to the sky. She invited Daniel to visit often. They shared meals. They walked the gardens. Sometimes they sat in silence, just watching the stars. One evening, as the second sun dipped low, Laura turned to him on the balcony. "What do you want for yourself now?" she asked. "You have given so much. What do you wish for?" Daniel thought for a long time. "I want to see this grow," he said. "I want to see your people free in ways they never were before. I want to keep learning from you. And maybe, I want a friend who understands what it feels like to be different, and still keep going." Laura smiled. "Then you have that already." She stepped closer. For the first time, she rested her head lightly against his shoulder. Daniel did not move away. They stood like that as the sky darkened, and the city lights came on below. Years passed, but the change stayed. The council grew. Old laws softened. New ones formed. Humans visited Varelia more often, not as strangers, but as partners. Ships carried ideas back and forth. Stories spread across the stars about the wedding that never happened, and the human who helped rewrite an empire. Daniel grew older. His hair turned gray at the sides. Lines appeared around his eyes, from smiling so much. Laura stayed near him. Her people called her the voice of choice. They called him the quiet guest who spoke loudest. One night, many years later, they sat together again on the same balcony. The stars looked the same, the wind felt the same, but everything else had changed. Laura took his hand. "Do you ever regret staying?" Daniel looked at the city below, lights moving like living rivers, people walking freely under the open sky. "No," he said, "not for a second." She squeezed his hand. "Good, because I would not have made it without you." Daniel smiled. "We made it together." The twin suns would rise again soon. Another day of work, of talk, of small steps forward. But tonight was quiet. Tonight was enough. In the end, one invitation had brought a human to an alien world. One moment of courage had broken old chains. And one simple choice, to stand up, to speak, to stay, had shown a whole empire that strength did not always come from size or armor. It came from heart. And sometimes, from a human who refused to look away.